to me. Literally, he said. Literally, I asked. We are literally in the heart of Jesus, he said. I thought we were in a church basement, but we are literally in the heart of Jesus. Someone should tell Jesus, I said. I mean, it's gotta be dangerous, storing children with cancer in your heart. I would tell him myself, Augustus said, but unfortunately I am literally stuck inside of his heart, so he won't be able to hear me. I laughed. He shook his head, just looking at me. What? I asked. Nothing, he said. Why are you looking at me like that? Augustus half smiled. Because you're beautiful. I enjoy looking at beautiful people, and I decided a while ago not to deny myself the simpler pleasures of existence. A brief, awkward silence ensued. Augustus plowed through. I mean, particularly given that, as you so deliciously pointed out, all of this will end in oblivion and everything. It was a cloudy day, typical Indiana, the kind of weather that boxes you in. Our little backyard was dominated by my childhood swing set, which was looking pretty waterlogged and pathetic. Augustus picked up on the third ring. Hazel Grace, he said. So welcome to the sweet torture of reading an imperial... I stopped when I heard violent sobbing on the other end of the line. Are you okay? I asked. I'm grand, Augustus answered. I am, however, with Isaac, who seems to be decompensating. More wailing. Like the death cries of some injured animal, Gus turned his attention to Isaac. Dude, does support group Hazel make this better or worse? Isaac, focus on me. After a minute, Gus said to me, can you meet us at my house in, say, 20 minutes? Sure, I said, and hung up. If you could drive in a straight line, it would only take like 5 minutes to get from my house to Augustus's house. But you can't drive in a straight line because Holiday Park is between us. Even though it was a geographic inconvenience, I really liked Holiday Park. When I was a little kid, I would wade in the White River with my dad, and there was always this great moment when he would throw me up in the air, just toss me away from him, and I would reach out my arms as I flew, and he would reach out his arms, and then we would both see that our arms were not going to touch, and no one was going to catch me. And it would kind of scare the shit out of both of us in the best possible way. And then I would, legs flailingly, hit the water and then come up for air uninjured, and the current would bring me back to him as I said, again, Daddy, again. On Saturday, my parents and I went down to the farmer's market in Broad Ripple. It was sunny, a rarity for Indiana in April, and everyone at the farmer's market was wearing short sleeves, even though the temperature didn't quite justify it. We Hoosiers are excessively optimistic about summer. Mom and I sat next to each other on a bench from a goat soap maker, a man in overalls who had to explain to every single person who walked by that yes, they were his goats. And no, goat soap does not smell like goats. My phone rang. Who is it? Mom asked before I could even check. I don't know, I said. It was Gus, though. Are you currently at your house? He asked. No, I said. That was a trick question. I knew the answer because I am currently at your house. Oh, well, we are on our way, I guess. Awesome. See you soon. There was this park behind the museum where a bunch of artists had made big sculptures. I'd heard about it, but had never visited. We drove past the museum and parked right next to this basketball court filled with huge blue and red steel arcs that imagined the path of the bouncing ball. We walked down what passes for a hill in Indianapolis to this clearing where kids were climbing all over this huge, oversized skeleton sculpture. The bones were each about waist high, and the thigh bone was longer than me. It looked like a child's drawing of a skeleton rising up out of the ground. My shoulder hurt. I worried the cancer had spread from my lungs. I imagined the tumor metastasizing into my own bones, boring holes into my skeleton, a slithering eel of insidious intent. Funky Bones, Augustus said, created by Joop van Lieshout. Sounds Dutch. He is, Gus said. So is Rick Smith's. So are tulips. Gus stopped in the middle of the clearing with the bones right in front of us and slipped his backpack off one shoulder, then the other. He unzipped it, producing an orange blanket, a pint of orange juice, and some sandwiches wrapped in plastic wrap with the crust cut off. "What's with all the orange?" I asked, still not wanting to let myself imagine that all of this would lead to Amsterdam. "National color of the Netherlands, of course. You remember William of Orange and everything?" He wasn't on the GED test. I smiled, trying to contain my excitement. "Sandwich?" he asked. "Let me guess," I said. "Dutch cheese and tomato. The tomatoes are from Mexico. Sorry." "You're always such a disappointment, Augustus. Couldn't you have at least gotten orange tomatoes?" He laughed, and we ate our sandwiches in silence, watching the kids play on the sculpture. I couldn't very well ask him about it, so I just sat there, surrounded by Dutchness, feeling awkward and hopeful. In the distance, soaked in the unblemished sunlight, so rare and precious in our hometown, a gaggle of kids made a skeleton into a playground, jumping back and forth among the prosthetic bones. "Two things I love about this sculpture," Augustus said. He was holding the unlit cigarette between his fingers, flicking at it as if to get rid of the ash. He placed it back in his mouth. "First, the bones are just far enough apart that if you're a kid, you cannot resist the urge to jump between them. Like you just have to jump from ribcage to skull, which means that, second, the sculpture essentially forces children to play on bones. The symbolic resonances are endless." Hazel Grace. "You do love symbols," I said, hoping to steer the conversation back toward the many symbols of the Netherlands at our picnic. "Right about that. You are probably wondering why you are eating a bad cheese sandwich and drinking orange juice, and why I am wearing the jersey of a Dutchman who played a sport I have come to loathe." "It has crossed my mind," I said. "Hazel Grace, like so many children before you, and I say this with great affection, you spent your wish hastily, with little care for the consequences. The Grim Reaper was staring you in the face, and the fear of dying with your wish still in your proverbial pocket, ungranted, led you to rush toward the first wish you could think of, and you, like so many others, chose the cold and artificial pleasures of the theme park. I actually had a great time on that trip. I met Goofy and I am in the midst of a soliloquy. I wrote this out and memorized it, and if you interrupt me, I will completely screw it up," Augustus interrupted. "Please to be eating your sandwich and listening." The sandwich was inedibly dry, but I smiled and took a bite anyway. "Okay, where was I? The artificial pleasures." He returned the cigarette to its pack. "Right, the cold and artificial pleasures of the theme park. But let me submit that the real heroes of the Wish Factory are the young men and women who wait, like Vladimir and Estragon, wait for Godot, and good Christian girls wait for marriage. These young heroes wait stoically and without complaint for their one true wish to come along. Sure, it may never come along, but at least they can rest easily in the grave knowing that they've done their little part to preserve the integrity of the wish as an idea. But then again, maybe it will come along. Maybe you'll realize that your one true wish is to visit the brilliant Peter Van Houten in his Amsterdamian exile, and you will be glad indeed to have saved your wish." Augustus stopped speaking long enough that I figured the soliloquy was over. "But I didn't save my wish," I said. "Ah," he said. And then, after what felt like a practice pause, he added, "But I saved mine." Really? I was surprised that Augustus was wish eligible, what with being still in school and a year into remission. "You had to be pretty sick for the genies to hook you up with a wish." "I got it in exchange for the leg," he explained. There was all this light on his face. He had to squint to look at me, which made his nose crinkle adorably. "Now, I'm not going to give you my wish or anything, but I also have an interest in meeting Peter Van Houten, and it wouldn't make sense to meet him without the girl who introduced me to his book." "It definitely wouldn't," I said. So I talked to the genies, and they are in total agreement. They said Amsterdam is lovely in the beginning of May. They proposed leaving May 3rd and returning May 7th. "Augustus, really?" He reached over and touched my cheek, and for a moment I thought he might kiss me. My body tensed, and I think he saw it because he pulled his hand away. "Augustus," I said, "really, you don't have to do this." "Sure I do," he said. "I found my wish." "God, you're the best," I told him. "I bet you say that to all the boys who finance your international travel," he answered.